If you're just joining us, if you're seeing this for the first time, I'm Lenny B. I'm an audio engineer, and I thought to myself, wow, I have, it's an odd situation that I'm in. I have access to, and I've made friends with just a huge pool of talented professional voiceover artists and actors and podcasters and YouTubers and anybody, that is creating content that comes to me as an audio engineer to help them. I can help make the voice sound better for recording and capturing and performing live and broadcasting and the whole thing. And I go, this could be a pretty valuable thing to share with my audience. So what you are seeing is the first episode. And by all means, I want to invite you to comment. Please leave comments. And if you've got questions, and we'll try to go through those. This is Nastasia Marquez. Many of you probably already know her. A voiceover artist and talent in her own right, but a friend of mine and a friend of the channel. I've been on your YouTube channel before, and I thought, wow, you'd be and one of my clients, by the way, too. So I thought you'd be a great first interview in this series that I'm going to do. Meet a real life professional voice actor and get to know them. And I thought, the experiences that you've had, that you've been doing this for years now, we're going to learn a little bit about you. I think anybody that is earlier on in the path can learn from you. So I want to share some of your experiences and expertise, and we'll talk about where you're going and a lot of acoustic treatment stuff you've done. There's so many. So let's start here. If you're just meeting Nastasia for the first time, tell us about what you do, who you are, and I guess just just about your career and maybe inside and outside of voiceover, because I know you do a lot of stuff outside voiceover too. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to keep it focused. I guess I do a lot of things. So, I'm a voice actor. It's what I do for work. I'm full time. I've been full time for a number of years now. I started in my journey about 10 years ago, and I didn't have any background in it. I didn't know what I was doing or even how to hook up a microphone to a computer, how to find projects and get paid. And, then there's the whole aspect of whether or not you feel qualified to be getting into the field that you're actually getting into. So,
Imposter syndrome, right? They call that?
yeah, yeah. And then, there's once you get experience under your belt, then you know what to expect from the industry and what's expected of you. So I started from scratch and built my way up from there. I worked, full-time jobs while I was working on the voiceover and trying to figure out the whole industry. And then eventually I was able to go full-time with that. So yeah, other than that, I'm super artsy craftsy. So I like to do a lot of different things in that realm and, play with our dogs and go outside, that kind of stuff.
Now, where in the U.S. are you, by the way?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas, yes. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit. Tell me more. Tell us, everybody watching, listening in on our conversation here. Tell us just about maybe the voiceover journey. I mean, when you and I first met, and you being one of my clients, I've hopefully helped you improve the quality of your audio. I can hear you've got a fantastic sound, even just, over a Zoom call right now, but, watching your videos and things. Tell us about your equipment and room treatment kind of journey, because that's been a thing, and we've talked a lot about that stuff. Tell me about that. And you've got beautiful custom panels behind you, I see, are the Gig Acoustics.
Yes, thank you. I mean, my understanding of the sound treatment and my equipment has improved so much since you and I got in contact with each other. Before that, it was always difficult to really understand sound treatment and, even being able to assess it on your own when you have no basis of understanding. And then I would think to myself that there's audio engineers who make this, who have to, I don't know, go through schooling. Maybe they have to have a certification or a degree or something. And I was like, I don't know anything about anything. How am I going to do this? So in the beginning, I just, there were like little tips and tricks on YouTube that, between like moving blankets and recording in a closet with a bunch of clothes and things like that. But it was really just trial and error. And my approach really was just put as much padding as
Mm-hmm.
humanly possible and it should work. And And then whenever it came to even the processing in the software that I was using, it was a lot of just guessing and thinking to myself, well, does that sound okay? And does this sound okay? And then eventually, when I reached out to you, I had been full time for a little bit already, and everything was working great. I had agents, and my recordings were good enough.
Hmm.
But once I reached out to you, I had a question. It was so specific. I was recording an audiobook and it was talking about RMS levels, and I
Hmm.
had no idea what that was. And I think I probably looked it up on YouTube, like, what the heck is an RMS level? And I found one of your videos. So I was so desperate because I was like, oh no, I need to get this in. So I sent you a quick message on YouTube and you responded immediately. And I think you hopped on a call with me. You were just so generous with your time and your knowledge. And from that point on, you just educated me on all things with the sound treatment, and you made presets for me so I still don't have to know about it. I just press a button and there it is.
You know what's funny, Nastasia? What's funny about that is, I'm so glad you feel that way about our meeting. But I see when I get an email or somebody's asking me a question, I'm like, oh, cool, somebody wants to talk about RMS levels, because nobody wants to talk to me about. I can't find people that are as interested as my little group of my tribe, as people would call it. Here's what I really want to make sure in these videos, and I want to make sure I do this for everything. I want to make sure that everything that I put out on my YouTube channel and blogs and newsletters has value. I want people to go, oh, I didn't know that. So throughout this, I'm going to try to push you a little bit. Tell me, from what we just talked about so far, you reaching out to an audio engineer, kind of making that decision in your head, and that imposter syndrome, feeling like, am I at the level where I need an audio engineer? I mean, I get all that stuff. Or specifically acoustic treatment. Let's just on those subjects, what would you advise? What were the things that, like, oh my God, as soon as I realized this, it was really valuable and it helped me move my career forward? What would you tell somebody now that, because I know you've been through iterations, like you were in the closet, you had the foam, and then you had a studio, and then you lost that studio, and then there's a lot going on. So you've learned a lot. What can you share just on acoustic treatment and maybe reaching out to an audio engineer, what we've talked about so far, that might help somebody that hasn't realized that yet?
So you mean if someone who hasn't built a studio yet, but they're trying to get into voice work, and kind of what the approach that I would suggest to be?
Yeah, like, once this is what I'm thinking, like, if you feel, gosh, once I realized this about acoustic treatment or the processing, once I learned this and this was kind of in my brain, it helped me get to the next level as far as, yeah, a little bit of,
Yeah.
the things that made you kind of get to that next level, those stepping stones maybe of understanding.
Yeah, I guess, and you can stop me if I get hyper focused or if I'm not answering
It's
your question.
okay.
But I think whenever it comes to sound treatment, the thing that stuck in my head immediately that you had told me right off the bat was your reflections. And that's the
Mm,
first thing I think about now, where your first reflection is right in front of you. So that's your first priority. Your second one's behind you. That's your second priority. And then I remember that you taught me that whenever I was in the closet, it was just a square box. And you told me that that was actually the least ideal shape that you could have because of how symmetrically the sound bounces around. So it was kind of like your perspective gave me an understanding more of the essence of how sound works. Something that it was just easy. It clicked more easily to think about it the way that you described it to me. So then whenever I sit down, it's like I don't really have to really know what I'm talking about to have an essence of how to approach it. I may not know
yes.
how to measure it or how to, do anything in a very technical aspect. I would never have someone pay me to, try to teach them any of it, but I know enough to, get by and figure it
Sure.
out that.
And then what's the result? Like, what do you feel? It's great, by the way. I think that really helps kind of people understand how important that is. And I always say, like, your most important piece of equipment is your sound treatment, because people love searching and shopping for microphones, and that's kind of secondary. So, but what has the result been, once you've understood And we're not going to make this. I'm not going to make. I'm not going to force this whole conversation to be about acoustic treatment. There's a ton of other stuff I want to get to, but maybe just like what was the result of the sound for you and your clients and things once you understood that and moved in that direction.
Yeah, and it's funny with voice acting, it comes up over and over again, the concept of I think what you're focusing on it with the acoustic treatment, but it's the same, it comes up over and over again throughout voiceover
Mm,
where there's not, I think often whenever you're getting into something, you want it to be black and white. You want to know which decision is best, which one should I pick, what should I do first, that kind of stuff, and you want it to be very
yes.
clear.
Mm,
But when you're actually in it, it's so much more about like, well, it isn't wrong, but could it be better? Or it's not, there's nothing wrong with the sound, but whenever you're in an audition, is somebody just gonna outshine you because it sounds better? It was the same thing with the processing that I was doing for myself versus the one that you did for me. No one ever complained about my processing
right.
when I was doing it myself, but with the way that it elevated after the presets that you made me, it just cleared the path and made it so much easier for me to focus on what my craft was as opposed to worrying about whether my technical treatments and presets and all of that were up
Sure.
to par.
That's
So,
It's a big deal, and I love that you're. I mean, I feel like you're being completely honest, which is great. And I know we're friends and we've worked together and blah blah, but you genuinely feel there was a value for you there.
yeah, absolutely. And then there's also the value of just having the confidence, whenever
Yes.
you're in an acting kind of profession, there's this like, you know, paradox or maybe like some weird kind of dichotomy between never feeling like you're enough because your
Mm-hmm.
whole job is to get judged
Mm-hmm.
based on, all of the
Yes.
specs are saying be like authentic and utterly likable and
Right.
like there's so much pressure to be someone because you want to book a job. And then on the other hand, there's a constant message of like, just trust yourself, you're enough, you're enough. And it's like,
Right.
you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So having internal confidence in what you're doing and building that up over time, it makes all the difference in the world on even the
Yes.
smallest little decisions that you make every single day. It puts you on a certain path, whether you realize it or not. So to have the confidence of like, no, I know that my sound treatment is perfect, like it sounds
Or
great.
right.
I trust my audio engineer more than I trust anybody else,
You,
or that my
you know where that
presets sound awesome.
that's so perfect. I really think that's one of the things that I offer is confidence. And back in the day when I was in my 20s and stuff, I'm a musician, so I've been on stage. It got to the point to where, and when I was in radio, they're like, give Lenny the microphone. He'll go up. And, I always did that. I always was the one that was performing. And since I was a little kid, so I've got that. But it's the same feeling though. When you go on stage, you're exposing yourself. You are going on stage in front of people in real time, and this is my analogy here, to be criticized. You could screw up, and it could be dangerous. That's where like the energy comes from and everything. And I remember, as growing up, going on stage, being in bands, performing live for sometimes hundreds of thousands of people in certain situations. This was back when I had a lot of hair. Damn it, damn it. Um, uh, I would have loved to have somebody at the side of the stage before I walked up the stairs in front of everybody to go, you got this. I just checked, your guitar's in tune. Your mic sounds great. Just do exactly what we did in the rehearsal. I will go and make sure that you sound good by the sound booth. You got this. Go knock them dead, To have somebody that says, I just confirmed everything sounds good. It's like, oh my God, thank you. So that's a big deal when you got to go up and perform for somebody. So I understand that feeling, and I feel like I get to do that for everybody else in a certain way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely how I feel about it. Before when you know that you don't know something,
Mm,
it's throughout the industry, you're going to get criticized just like everybody gets criticized throughout life. And you're going to have feedback that isn't, sometimes it's right and sometimes it's not, and everybody is different. And all of your clients, everyone that you're interacting with is different. So it's a matter of when you don't know something and when you're not fully comfortable in a certain area,
Hmm.
then you're always wondering to yourself, is this criticism valid? Is it something that I should really be listening to, or do they not really know what they're talking about? And it you never feel like you really have your footing. So once I felt 100% comfortable with my sound treatment and 100% comfortable with my presets, it's so much easier to navigate instances where you're speaking to a client that isn't familiar with how it's supposed to work or sound or anything like that. So I'm more easily able to even guide my own clients on what their expectations are, because now I know exactly, like, I'm very comfortable with everything that I'm doing. I'm comfortable with my whole arena,
Hmm.
and then I'm able to see them more clearly, if that makes sense, as opposed
Yeah.
to being just as confused as they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're just joining this live stream, or if you're watching this at a later date, Nastasia Marquez is a client of mine and a friend of mine. She's a YouTuber. She's been doing voiceover for professionally for quite a while. And the reason why we're having this conversation is because I realize I've got this pool of pro voiceover and creators and podcasters and art, voice talents that have experience and can share techniques and confidence and share little things that they've learned along the path of their career that might be able to help you as a voiceover or artist or a creator or whatever you're doing. And Nastasia, thank you for being and doing, being available and doing this for me. Let's talk about your voiceover career. What's your day to day like? Just talk about what kind of things do you do, because there's some people maybe haven't heard your work, and I want to, maybe while you're talking, I may switch over to your. I'm going to put your website on, and we'll look at your YouTube channel just while you're answering that question. Is that cool?
Yeah. I do just about everything in the realm of voiceover. So I record audiobooks, I do a lot of commercial, I do video games, I do corporate stuff, I do e-learning. Basically anything that you hear voice on, then there's a space for it in voice acting. And the more that you diversify the types of projects that you get into, the more stable you know, the more stable your career is going to be. So I do a bit of everything. And then I'm also, into social media as like a creator. I'm a very expressive person and I need different outlets to
Mm,
express whatever I want, but it also serves as different credibility. If you don't exist online these days, then you don't really exist. So
right.
if I make sure that I'm, staying active in different areas and arenas and just kind of trying to be as authentic to myself as I can be, then it gives me credibility with clients, and I think it kind of, naturally navigates me in a place where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. We've got Terry Weiss is watching. David Forsyth is watching. Caesar has joined. We've got Whisper of Worlds that are joining. And by all means, if you've got a question for Nastasia, pro voiceover artist, doing this full time. This is your full time gig. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Um, Talk to me about your dream goal. Like, I think this is good. I know you've come a long way from just starting and having an idea. Maybe I should do voiceovers, or I like kind of doing this, getting your first client, starting to make a little bit of money doing this, focusing, investing on better equipment and acoustic treatment. That there's that rise and that growth for anybody's career. Tell me about if I have I always say this, if I've got a magic wand and tomorrow you would do like your dream gig, what would that be for you? What's your goal? What are you striving for?
Oh, my answer might get a little nebulous. I don't know.
And have you thought about it?
Well, I suppose I've gone through, I'm a very spiritual person, and I am always very focused on like internal progress and emotional intelligence and things like that. And that's like my life obsession essentially. And so I always kind of am trying to navigate things in I guess I've been through phases in voice acting. When I first started, before I was even making money, obviously I had like the stars in my eyes, like, oh, I want to do a Pixar movie or something like that. And all of those things would be so phenomenal and amazing. And then whenever I was full time, whenever I first went full time, my focus was just getting as much work as I possibly could to validate my full timeness in voiceover,
Mhm.
which worked out very well. And then I've had times where I've been so busy where I've been for like a solid year straight during 2020. I was recording maybe like 8 or 9 hours a day straight.
Wow.
And it was like, it's like I've been able to experience the different types of goals that perhaps I set for myself and see how that feels to me. And back then it was too much. It was really overwhelming, and I started to really understand how the craft is so much about your own energy.
Mm.
And whenever you're giving so much of your energy and having to switch that energy so quickly between projects, it can be so draining on yourself. And then I had to learn how to refocus. Go ahead.
No, it makes me laugh because you got to add, you know, you're also the caterer to your business, your costumes, your sales, your client relations. I mean, there's also that to the business aspect of trying to go back and forth and, just making sure you email and stay up and don't drop the ball on some of the sales stuff. It can definitely, I mean, any business, it could be a lot. Would you share maybe just kind of, I mean, you don't have to give any details if you don't want. You do whatever you feel. Do you work directly with clients? Um, is it agents that you get work from, or do you work from platforms in the beginning? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. I really strongly believe that it's kind of like, people who invest in stocks, like diversification is the priority. And I, the way that I kind of see it in my mind, not that I've like fully concretized it in my idea of it, but it's like different types of projects are almost like different types of foods that you have on your plate. And some of them will sustain you for a long time. Some of them don't have a big payout. Some of them are very small and it's like a chunk of energy for you. And it's kind of like you find a groove between juggling a lot of different things from different places, and the more sources that you have to pull and work from, the better. So I have several agents, and I have a manager that functions more like an agent, I would say. And then I have a lot of personal clients that I do my own self-marketing. I used to be on Fiverr, that platform, but there's other
Mm.
platforms as well. And I decided for myself personally that I was doing well enough and I was performing at such a level that I didn't need to be on platforms and compete and follow the rules of a platform.
Mm.
So, so the majority of my work is from my agents and then, like propelled through
Sure.
my personal clients. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I'm getting some real fun. Let me see here. I'm getting some real fun comments. Caesar says, you guys have some good microphones here. Let me fix the size here. Yes, Caesar, thanks for commenting. The Roswell Mini K87 is my mic, and Nastasia's got the C414. I know you got a new mic recently. I want to talk about that. And David has a good question. He says, what percentage of gigs require you to process your own audio, and how many of them want you to send the raw audio? It's a great, I think that's a good
Question.
question. Like, what's the percent of, what are some of the engineering requirements that you see at your level with agents and working professionally full time?
Yeah, it's actually kind of surprising, and it is continuing to change. I don't think that especially now, there's really nothing static about the industry.
Mm.
But all of my personal clients, I think there's not an instance that I can remember where they really wanted a raw file, but I always offer it in the session.
It's a good idea.
So the majority of the time, over 90% of the time, I'm using the presets that you've made me, and they know exactly the sound to expect because I usually have auditioned or sent them a sample file for the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, whenever it comes to agents, the main difference between your personal clients and your agents are with personal clients, you're typically, if it's a live session, then you're typically hopping on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
and they're directing you, but you're recording on your end. And then I
Okay.
check and see how they want the file, and usually they want it mastered exactly as the sound that they heard in the audition, and then I send it off that way. With agents, it used to be that you had to have, what was it called? An ISDN line?
Hmm.
Is that what it's called? I never had
It's
one of those because Source Connect was around by the time it became relevant for me.
Yeah, ISDNs are really expensive. Broadcasting used to use that. It's just a digital line. But yes, you're right on target.
Yeah, so when it became relevant, Source Connect was just as viable as an ISDN. So I still have to have Source Connect, and I still do use it whenever I book through my agents, which is
Mm.
more regularly. But even last week, I had a booking through my agent, and Source Connect was for some reason failing us. We couldn't get it to work. So we just hopped on Zoom
Yep.
and finished the whole recording there, and they were totally fine with it. I think I sent them the raw file, but maybe 2 weeks prior, I was doing like a big international campaign through my agent with NARS. So it's like you don't get much higher than that in the industry. So that's really top of the industry. And they were fine. They didn't even ask for Source Connect. We hopped on Zoom. They wanted me to master the files, and I got it over to them that way. So I would say that where people are becoming more and more relaxed about you having the whole process on your end as they learn to trust the talent and the space that they're working in.
Yeah, because people's home studios are getting better. The information and the know-how to get better is readily available. And also, even even the crappiest audio in this digital world that we live in is often better than analog audio was 20 years ago. So I mean, and I always say this too. It's like the whole idea is it's really all about the emotional connection you make with the listener. It's not always about being totally perfect. Now, it depends on what level you're using or whatever. But Nastasia, this stuff is great. I love that you're sharing this. I think this is really valuable, and I really appreciate you adding. And there's the questions are coming in. David is kind of piggybacking on the last question about how much raw versus processed audio do people ask for. So it's great. So most of the time it's just the processing that I've done for you. And let me clarify something. Right now, there's no processing on my microphone. There's no processing on your microphone for this live. Correct? Is that true?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so when you process the custom processing I made for you, that's something you do in post. That you add when you send out a demo or whatever. And you can hear some of those. You can hear that on your website. That's correct?
Yes. Yeah.
My processing you could hear on your website. That's makes me
Yeah.
proud. I feel like yeah. David is just adding to the question. He said, "Do you is most of the stuff from your home studio, or do you get invited to studios sometimes, professional studios that you need to record from?"
Yeah, everything is from home, except whenever I was traveling this summer and then I recorded from a studio that I brought with me. But there was only one time ever where I've gone into the studio to work with a client, and that was years ago. But uh, and if he's trying to get an idea of like what to expect in, what things might be asked of him, I would say that most clients across the board, they're happy to have you record at home, and nobody wants to pay studio fees anymore
Right.
because it's not necessary, and studio fees are expensive, and it kind of eats up a chunk of people's day where they could just have you record from home in 30 minutes and be done with it. The only times where my location matters is with New York City and LA. And the projects that really matters with are the ones through my agents. And when it comes to high level video games, animation, or just, clients who they have their whole operation in those cities, that's when they want you to come in the studio. If they already have one, then they want you to come to them and they want to be able to have that
Sure.
interaction and whatever, makes them feel like it's more collaborative or efficient or, however
Yes.
that works with them. But they always accept the auditions from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it is possible that they might book you and fly you out, but chances are slim because both of those cities have such a high concentration of talented people. And they in those instances, they prefer the convenience of being able to ask you in, but it's
Yeah.
not it doesn't affect your ability to book work or anything like that.
We're speaking with Nastasia Marquez. It's just nastasiamarquez.com is the website. And I believe
Yes.
and the same at Nastasia Marquez. And I'm going to put the links in the description of this video. Have you been? Has somebody flown you to their studio? Hey, we want you to track this. Have you done that yet?
No, no, I haven't. And I prefer recording from home. You know, I
Yeah.
think getting on a plane and going out, that would
Yeah.
all be very exciting and everything, but
But
it's
time, it
also
would take so much time.
yeah, exactly. And there's so much coordinating to do that whenever I get like availability checks from my agents and stuff, it's just so nice to like only need an hour here and there that's booked as opposed to packing up my stuff, hopping on a plane, going
Hmm.
through the excitement of getting somewhere else and that being the focused project for several days.
Um, my buddy Linton Vocal Velvet says, do you have a dedicated travel mic and interface when you travel? And I just watched some of your videos and some of your content dives deep into that, but tell us about your travel setup.
Yeah, I for my interface I use an Audient ID4. And that's always worked for me. I got a second one whenever I went traveling just because I was wondering whether I really wanted to unplug everything from my at-home setup. But yeah, that's the one that I travel with. And then this is the mic that I use, the AKG C414. I got the Sennheiser, which you and I have spoken about recently. I got the Sennheiser.
MKH 416, the shotgun mic.
Yes, the MKH 416. I got that a couple months ago. Why did I get that? I think I bought it when I was going to go to Rome and I was like nervous about like everything and I was like, you know what? I just need another microphone. Maybe just in case I'll just get another microphone.
Yes.
And then I ended up using the AKG whenever I went and it worked out just fine. But yeah, the stuff that I use at home is the stuff that I travel with.
Um, I've had that same conversation with myself. I just need another microphone. Um, yeah, so yeah, that's really good. And we did a preset, and a shotgun microphone is a different monster altogether, different animal, I guess. So it and it could be complicated or it could be useful or whatever. Um, another question coming in. Thank you for the questions, by the way. This is awesome, and I think this is. Are you cool to continue for a little bit here, answering
Yeah,
questions?
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
in terms of where you record, let me see around the studio. Can you prefer? Okay. Hi, Lenny and Nastasia. This is from Anthony Wieland. Why not put it on the screen here? He says, "What sort of setup were you using when you first started? Did you have a fully functioning website and pro demo reels? Where did you first source work from?"
Mm.
Yeah, tell us about your first mic, and then where did you first start getting work? I think this is going to be helpful for people that maybe are just starting. How did you get your equipment and start?
Yeah, I think I had the Audio Technica AT2020. I think that's what it's
I
called.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the first mic I started with. Um, and my setup was we were in an apartment. Oh my gosh, no, my very first setup was abysmal. I'll go with my first like actual setup where I was doing regular work from. It was in a closet, so all of the clothes definitely helped. And then I had no idea what I was doing. So I had one of those boxes that, people advertise, and it's just like a nice studio foam, but they build it to go just around the microphone. And then
I think I want to put that on my head for this year for Halloween. I think that's going to be my
that
costume.
box,
Just putting that box on my head.
and I still have it. Sometimes, like whenever I was playing around with the mobile setup, I just used it as the ceiling. But so I put one of those boxes. And then I remember that I didn't understand why the sound was muffled as opposed to just being dead.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, maybe it's too much absorption and not enough of like a backbone to it. And I
Hmm.
was just guessing. So
Yeah.
So I kid you not, like I put a cardboard box around that box, and then I was like, but I'm not insulated like the microphone is. So I built like this this foam that went over my head, and then I couldn't see my computer. So I put my laptop on top of the box, and then if you walked into the closet, it looked like I was in a cardboard train with like this like captain's like hoop around me, and all you could see were my little eyeballs as
Right.
I'm like reading from my screen and speaking into the
So
box.
great. There's some
So
there's some really odd situations that we'll put ourselves in. But I'll tell you what. I mean, I commend you first of all for experimenting, because that's a big part of it. Sometimes there's no rules. You just got to mess. Let me add this. Let me take this away. Let me rotate this. Let me do. And sometimes you just find a good location and it sounds good. And by the way, I'll say this. Those isolation boxes, they're not wrong. I mean, I have clients that use them and can get an improved sound. It really depends on how the room is to begin with, and then with that and without that. So I don't know. We're not making fun of that, because that could help in certain situations. But you've graduated. Caesar says, I think your first setup had leaves and stuff. And I remember when you were in the closet and you first got some foam too. So that was something as well.
yeah, that was the next iteration. Once we moved into a house, then we had a spare closet, and that's the one where I started my YouTube channel in, where I had just gone full time, so I was doing well enough to pay all of my bills, and I was doing better than I had even expected. And yeah, that's the one that he's remembering, where I had panels behind me that I had glued moss to.
Yeah. It's cool. It's
Hmm.
creative. I liked it. Um,
Thanks.
what would you say that people following your YouTube channel, what's the value there? What's the utility? Because I know you've got quite a few followers, and I know you share your personal career life, and you share other things that you do. I know you're a very creative person and into a lot of different things. If someone were to follow you, what do they get from you? What do you hear that is a value for people who follow your channel? And I want you. And by the way, I implore you, or I suggest you go check out Nastasia's channel, because it's cool to see your sound treatment and your path, and you talk about your career and stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, I think my approach to social media is perhaps a little bit of like a little inversed from what you might expect. I think whenever I put things up, it's almost like I'm like looking more at myself, and it's like a reflection to
Hmm.
me that helps me figure out who I am at different points and helps me reflect on myself. And then I just share it that way. When I started, I was as I was figuring things out, I kept having these moments of like, man, if only I had known this when I started. If only like I had known somebody to give me some information when I started, it would have like eased my mind so much in the process, because I had to figure out everything. And especially when it comes to expectations,
Hmm.
that even knowing where to set your expectations is a huge deal between your ability to keep forging on, or your probability of just giving up because you have no idea whether you're in the right ballpark.
Sure.
So when I first started, it was almost like therapeutic for me, where it felt like I was talking to my younger self,
Hmm.
and that's the focus that I had, like just like what would I tell myself, and like let me, if it helps someone else, then that makes me feel good too. And then as I continued on in it, I think I found that whenever you're an actor, film, or voice acting, there's so many unemployed actors, or there's always, there's so much of the job that doesn't feel like it's really getting into the artistic heart of what you're yearning for. And that's part of the job. And, I'm so fortunate to do everything that I do, and I love all of it. But I was yearning for something that felt more like an expression of myself. So that's kind of where I've been navigating lately, of just like, who am I? Like, how do I like really like focus on the parts of me that feel like fulfilled and expressive and it's fun to like put together these little videos and it feels like a project and like a piece of art for me.
Hmm. What would you say? I mean, I think this would be a good place to kind of wrap things up here, and that's awesome. I'd like to hear that about your YouTube channel. It's almost like journaling, right? It's almost like,
Yeah.
yeah. As we kind of wrap this up here, and thank you so much, Nastasia, for coming on and just being as open about your growth and career and everything to help others. What would you say? It's just some advice, something that maybe would you think would help somebody that's just starting. And I'm going to focus it a little bit because I think it's really cool that you've got multiple agents. You're working on a bunch of different platforms. You've established yourself to a point to where you're doing it. You're working at a pretty high level, getting some big clients and some big projects. What would you say on that subject of getting to the, from maybe intermediate to a higher level with agents and getting bigger projects? What was something that you could share that maybe would help people that are looking to do the same thing?
You mean in like a technical aspect, like
Mm-mm.
or
No,
more
no.
like
You know what I really think would be good is something that you like switched in your brain. Like, oh, as soon as I started thinking this way, or as soon as I started saying, hey, I need to do this. I really, yeah, I think I want to get like, I want your business mind of like, oh, when I started realizing this, this came to me. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I hope
yeah,
that.
I guess I hope I can answer it because these are the things that I always think about, but like it gets so like almost like unformed thoughts, but it's like essences that I feel whenever I'm like kind of working through stuff. I think that, oh, what would I say? I think that once you figure out the direction that you're going, once like I would separate my business into like legs of a chair, like this is like my client stuff, these are the projects that I have, this is like my marketing arm, that kind of stuff. I would try to organize my brain in some kind of way of like, what is it that I'm wanting? Where am I going? Like, what are my goals? And once I did that, then I would be able to bring tasks in where I would, especially in the beginning, whenever I went full time, and it's like that first day when you don't have a job to show up to, and then you're like, whoa, I'm the boss. What do I do?
Yeah.
So I would organize it that way. I would try to break things into as small blocks as I could just to get my mind straight. I
Mm-hmm.
would assign tasks to each of those blocks so I'd have an action to work towards. And then whenever it came to, I'll say that I've been with my manager and they're phenomenal and they have really incredible opportunities. So it's the most competitive level of the industry where I'm like auditioning for, big animated films and, Call of Duty and things like that, where it doesn't get more competitive. And once I got into that realm, it was like a different animal where it's like, it's not just the actions anymore because everyone's doing the right thing, but how are you going to book the job when it's so competitive and it's such a subjective field? And I think where I'm at, the most important thing that, I've been with them like 3 years and I've booked the most with them this year. I'm booking with them every couple weeks since I got back from Rome essentially. And I've wondered what the difference has been. And I think it really has been that I've stopped chasing a goal and that I'm focused on my process and my process is my reward. And if I focus on like just doing the absolute best that I can every moment with exactly what I'm doing and not have any ulterior motives of what it's going to get me in the future. If I really just infuse myself and appreciate and enjoy what I'm doing and I use it as an opportunity to explore myself and, improve on my craft, then I let go of all the results and I let go of anything else, then things just kind of happen. And I think perhaps in there is like a practice of authenticity and just allowing the
Mm-hmm.
world, you know, letting that be enough, and then things just happen to come to you more, as opposed to you holding any kind of energy of yearning or desperation or want.
Yeah, because that can color a performance. That could change what you're doing. That's awesome. Wow, that was really pretty. I think that helps kind of people get in the right mind space. I'm going to ask one more question. How do you feel about focusing on what you love to do versus what you're asked to do? Because I think that plays into that a little bit. And I know this is kind of deep, but I really think this is a valuable lesson for a lot of people, creative, anybody, painters, singers, anybody, because I bet you're asked to do a lot of things, and I'm sure you're versatile. I know you are, your performances, but do you actively try to go, all right, these are the last 10 things. I loved that. I wish I had 10 of those job instead of doing all these things. You know, where's your mind in that kind of stuff? Do you focus on a specialty, or you're like, I'm fine doing different things? I hope that's clear enough, but I want to kind of get your
Yeah,
thoughts on that.
you know, I think that I heard Russell Brand say something in a story that he was telling someone the other day, and obviously he's very religious and has found God and all of that stuff, and that's his platform or his focus these days. And I heard him tell a story a couple months ago where he said that he saw, I think it was JD Vance or something. He saw like someone who's in the public eye, and he had never met them before, and he had been thinking all day what he was going to do for his next podcast or whatever. He met I think it was JD Vance, and they had like a really authentic conversation. And at the end of that, I think he said he asked JD Vance for like a selfie, and he saw that JD Vance's expression just changed. Like, I thought we were having like a moment, you know, kind of thing. But he agreed to the picture and walked away, and everything
Hmm.
was fine. And and Russell Brand was talking about how he recognized in that moment that he was asking of something. And he wants to practice being able to have interactions without asking anything in return. And I think that's kind of where that it like the energy is so subtle, and it matters. And I think that the way that I kind of am trying to approach everything, and it has been paying off, has been to, you know, it's like you wake up and you're in a really good mood, and nothing in the day can spoil that mood. It's like I'm fully taking responsible for my energy of the day. And regardless of what projects I have to work on, whether it's boring or whether it's not like animation or something like that, that stuff doesn't matter, because on my best day, it wouldn't bother me. I would be excited about it. There are some days where I wake up and I'm interested in absolutely everything for 2 minutes. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's an energy that's within me, that it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm engaged with that as often as I can be. It's not dependent on what project I'm working on. And if there's any time where I have a moment of wanting something more creative, and then I take responsibility for that as well, as opposed to thinking like, oh, I'm just not booking those gigs. Like, everyone's a creator these days. I have YouTube, I have TikTok, I have
I
Instagram.
know.
If I
Yeah.
want to create, then I'll create. And then
Hmm.
other than that, I'm just so eternally grateful for all of the work that I have. And I can just bring my best self to any kind of project. And it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm having fun.
Um, wow, great advice. I think that's really great, and it's only available from somebody who's been through the, you know, you've driven the laps that you have to get where you are. It's great to kind of hear that from you. And you know, I wish you luck, and I know you're going to be continued. You'll continue to be successful and do what you want to do. It's great, and I'm here to help you any way that I can. Um, if somebody wants to ask a question, what's cool about these YouTube live things is we can ask and I'll answer, or maybe I may tag you and maybe you can answer or something if somebody's got questions about any of the things, if they watch us at a later time. And then also, you're okay if people reach out to you on your Instagram or your YouTube channel with some questions and maybe tips. Are you okay with
Yeah,
that?
definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. NastasiaMarquez.com is the website. And if you just put Nastasia voice in YouTube, you'll be one of the top um, search results for sure. Um, Anything you want to add before we wrap this up? Thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited that this is like your first episode. So it's an honor. Thank you.
This is the first, yes, I'm going to do more of this. And again, if you're just kind of joining here, I've realized I've got just this pool of really creative, talented people, especially doing voiceover work. And I want to share some of your expertise and some of your experiences. And we've definitely done that with you today. Nastasia, thank you so much for sharing and being open.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a
Now,
lot of fun.
since this is one of the first lives that I've done, I'm going to make sure I push the off button. Right, I'm gonna put my mouse over the finish, stop the stream button before I say goodbye, so I know that it's going to happen at the right time. So thank you again for doing this. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.